We got a lineman school up in Mount Gilead now that we send them all up to, and we got a little training field. Got a lot of different poles. Anyway, today what we're getting ready to show you is just exactly what can happen out there in the real world, but we're just bringing it to you. 120 volts, we're coming in. You'll see this little black cord we got zigged around. We got it plugged in there on an 80 amp breaker, 120 volts. You'll see a transformer. Sean's pointing dead. That transformer right here is a little 180, 120 volts. It'll take 1,000 or 14,400 volts through it. What we're doing today, we're going to backfeed. And that backfeed, you'll hear us talk about it just like a generator. That transformer don't care. It'll go either way. It's like a water pump. It's normally our electricity, we would bring the 14,400 in, 120 out or 240 in your house, everybody's fine. This way we're going to bring it back up through. And we'll probably, yesterday we had what we say, RC, about 14,200 volts. We'll bring somebody out of the crowd. Probably we'll have to use a volunteer. You said you're not shy, right? So anyway, then the next thing we have here is what we call an oil circuit reclosure. These things out online, you guys ever see when the lightning storms and the old lights start blinking? Lights go out, come back on, go out, come back on. You go, uh-oh. Sometimes they stay on, but your neighbors call and says, I'm out of power. That's what that oil circuit reclosure does. We'll talk a little bit about it down the road, but all it is a set of contacts, and it counts. It hopes when the time comes, the fault, which might be we call fuses, will open on some type of a problem. You'll see on these, I'll just kind of pass those around. You'll see the metal. All this is nothing fancy. It's not to protect the public. You kind of see it in there. This one here is probably. When it gets to a certain temperature, these fuses melt. And that's all it is. You ever heard a big boom? You go, holy cow, what was that? Most of the time it is then. They're in all shapes and sizes. This one looks like when it goes into the door. You'll see these guys shut these doors. The scary part about electricity is if we hear it, we see it, too late in it. So we'll show right here. Get old Dustin then. Once electricity starts arcing, it builds a gas. And that's what you see. It starts conducting. That's all that is a gas. Watch how close he gets before it starts actually arcing. There's an inch, probably 3/4. About 3/4 inch, it starts arcing. They say for every 10,000 volts, you got to get within 1/4 inch of that line. But see, once it starts, he can pull 3-4 feet. You ever heard the guy at the dump truck say, well, that electricity jumped 4 feet in my truck? Well, that wasn't true. He actually almost touched that line, but as he was trying to pull away over the bed, the truck shifted, the tires started melting. Boom, that's what you get. Well, we're out there working on a line. We got some of your testers you guys use too. We always test. The 3 things I tell everybody when they're out there is gloves, test, grounds. The rubber gloves you'll see these gentlemen wearing, they're a special natural rubber, but they're tested for 30,000 volts. So what I tell everybody, gloves, you test your line, make sure there's no presence, and you'll hear us talk about grounds. Right here's what we do with the ground. And it's nothing more than a glorified jumper cable. It's got a little bit of special hinge on it. It's got a crimp piece here, and we tighten this down. But in theory, all we're going to do is take one to the neutral, as I was telling you in there about the neutral return. This one will go to your conductors, then we go. Because out there on the overhead power lines, there is no insulation on these lines. You'll see right here, this is pretty much a standard for any power company in the United States. No insulation. The cost to be ungodly. Above this is the 600 volts and below. It has it. But as you see, so what we got to do when we're out there. Good.
982, Larry 1 at the first responder. 5080 Bigelow Drive, Montgomery. Cross Street is Mango Lane, Tudor Lane. Climb on Northwest EMS 1. Time out 1357.
So what we got to do, we go out there and we test. That's nothing more than like what your guys' sticks are. Jay, you got your stick with you? How about turn it on and let's kind of do a thing. If you guys don't care what we're doing this. We did this yesterday. We had rings. I wasn't real familiar with these. I always tell everybody it'll give you somewhat of an indication. We're going to let you walk in, just like you would be in the seat. We won't let you get close not trust me. Got a timeout first? I got it on now. Now go to that straight voltage end. Because yesterday rings could almost get it past this level. Now let's put it on that extreme and start backing up. Let's see how close you can get before that thing starts really. Yeah. Get that out of your way. Nice. See what you got? We got 120 volts going through that little cord. See, there's the high voltage number, about 14,200. So yesterday, that's good. You're getting about that 50 feet. That's what was concerning me yesterday. We had him almost clear in there before. Yep. Yep. Start walking back in. I still am on the button. So. Yep. That's what it was. I probably had him all we had him nervous yesterday. He had his feet together and he was walking. We opened that up and his eyes got this big. So good. That makes me feel a little better. You know, what I was telling you guys, you need something out there. Don't get me wrong. But I would never trust myself. If that didn't beat, I would not say everything's good.
That's that front focus one right now.
Yep, I'm gonna step back on. See, so it's still, now let me step off and just see.
If I put it in that,
Yep. Now I even back up. Now if I step off, kind of walk in, so we still got 120 volts going through that. Just let you right on in, I'm gonna step on the button, I promise you. See, it's not even gonna pick it up.
it's insulated,
So it won't. So see, this is how our lines are. These overhead lines, they're insulated. See, we have the underground. So that ain't going to help you. So they, yeah. So let's one more time. You guys clear? Yep. So that's good. I was kind of concerned yesterday that we was getting too close. So it's going to take you some. And that must have been what it was. I'd never really been around them, so I probably had rings that shook up because we had done burn about half the stuff we had in here. And then they asked us to bring it out. Good. Anyway, back to what we were saying. Gloves next round. Right here, these 3 steps, I always tell our linemen, if they do this every time, they'll go home to their loved ones. Take one of these out of the equation, good possibility you're going to be not with us or in the hospital. I know every time you hear of an accident or something, and you'll see one of these missing. And most of the time, believe it or not, it's this one right here. 9 times out of 10, you keep these gloves on. Just like our hot boots that we wear, these are a special hot boot. We call them hot boots, or Dielectric Overshoe. They're good up to 20,000 volts, but they're only good when you first get them out of the bag, right, gentlemen? I always tell these guys, these are just a secondary means of protection. We're around a lot of equipment and stuff that we get a lot of voltage, stray voltage, step potential, and that might save you. We'll talk about it here in a minute, but it could save you from taking a pretty good shock. But that's always cool. All right, let's go back to the rubber gloves, guys. Let me get you. When they're up there working on the lines, yeah, it's got my name on it. So they think about me. They also got me these. We got the low voltage. One thing about with electricity, rubber's natural, it's friendly with us. So when we're up there working on the lines, we can physically go up there, because people don't like being without power, do they? We hate it. So we can physically go up there, work on the lines, as long as we wear our PPE, we can move insulators, move the wire, tie stuff in, change things out, everything's good. One of the things OSHA says with this is, we test these rubber gloves here, 26,500 volts every month. We send them in, they get another pair, we got them in transit. In the field prior to use, OSHA says you will test these. So one of the things we have, gentlemen, make these is a little piece of PVC pipe. They call it a budding tester. Basically what we do is, you just go out there and you roll them up. This one's got a hole right there, so it's going to be a little hard for me to. But what you do is you look for any type of leaks, you look for any discoloring. If you start seeing this yellow, you know you got problems. Because one of the things about the gloves, electricity don't care about anything. As I was telling you about polymer release path resistance, it don't care. What's your name?
I'm Joni.
Joni, you got good eyes, don't you?
Yeah, I guess.
Can you see that pin on there?
No.
If I put it back in, will you able to see it? The thing with the protectors, they call me an SOB, don't you, Sean and Dustin? That's safety occupation law. If I'm working, it's kind of the buddy system. If they're up there working on lines and I don't see this, they're in trouble with me, but their buddy might holler, hey, get your gloves on, you're getting too close. So, and it keeps it from any type of punchers. That's what we call them protectors, just because of that. My little cold fire department on that. Let's cook the hot dog. Joni, you hungry? How about you? You hungry? You want a rubber glove? You're awful quiet. You know that? You're like, I think you're going to pick on me.
So would you be protected sheerly with a pair of gloves?
I'm sorry?
Would you be protected sheerly with a pair of gloves?
Will you be protected for that nominal voltage of 14,000? Yes. Now, don't get me wrong. If you get in serious, if it's multiple phases, that's where you, like ours on this, 14,400 volts in class 3 gloves, yes. You could grab, as long as you don't work another potential. We always talk about that bird on the line while we're doing that. How's that bird stay on the line and not get shot? Not touching the ground, not another potential in theory. Had a little kid a few years ago, his hand went up. I said, yes. He said, they got rubber feet. He said, no, get to the back of the class. It was neat. I didn't realize. He was like, wow. Because if you look here, as I was telling you, it's so violent. Like there's a place of high voltage. When it starts burning, it burns from the inside out. It actually physically follows your bloodstream. Is that good enough? You want a bit more?
No, that's good.
Cook?
Temperature for me, yeah.
I don't have any buns. Or see, you got any buns?
We'll find some.
I'm sorry, but that's all you get. I had a lady eat one of these. But you see how violent it is? It cooks the inside, but then it starts, it's not like when it comes out, it's really, you don't need it on. But that's, yeah, we was at Richwood. Nothing against Richwood. I've been putting this presentation on, probably did 200 of them. And I handed it over to the lady and I look and she's eating it while I'm doing it. I had to stop the presentation. I said, oh my God, you're not eating that. The fire chief, whoever it was up there, go figure, the fire department, they get her in the ambulance, come back around. She's sitting in a gurney waving, and a little thing waving at me. And they're asking me 10 questions. What type of hot dog? Why'd you give it to her? I said, first thing, that's not my hot dog. The second thing, I never seen that lady before in my life. I said, the third thing, I'm not even from around here, guys. Yeah, so it was pretty good. All right, let's do 10 shoot. As we were saying, rubber is friendly. And watch Dustin, he'll put that bottom of the sole on this thing. Kind of friendly. I always tell kids, because they used to tell them climb up there and get them off the power line. But as you see, it's not. That one particular shoe cost me $70. I asked my wife, I said, hey, I said, can I borrow one of your shoes? She said, yeah. About a month later, she said, hey, what'd you do with my tennis shoes? I want them back. I said, well, I got one. I don't have two. Let's do the, what do you guys want to do next? Want to do blue? Let's do it. I'll tell you another little story. I'm always good with stories. I was down in Ernst County, and we used to buy these balloons because electricity don't care. It'll conduct to anything. And these Mylar balloons, and I had a princess one. And I never looked. I just grabbed them at the store and took them out. And this little, all of a sudden, we're doing this demonstration. I'm talking how I always do, blah, blah, blah. And out of the crowd, you hear this piercing, not princess. And I looked down, and this little 4-year-old, 5-year-old girl with her blonde hair, blue eyes, and tears dripping out, while Princess is giving. So I am doing something different now. Once in a while, I'll get a happy birthday, and I'll pick somebody out of the crowd and say, hey, Jay, it was your birthday, right? You're like, no. Any questions while we're going through this? We're just kind of casual, walking it through, and nobody's in a hurry, right?
You said it goes.
The test and medicated too.
These patterns,
Three to
If
very late
somebody's
drive on
getting
over.
close, you have to touch
Medicated
to.
Line 732,
If that person is touching that electricity's going through him, there's a very good chance if you get close enough to the you're going to feel it. Now, don't get me wrong, if you're touching him or trying to off, like he said in that movie about up in Wisconsin where the people jumped off the bus and tried to save it, they did that. That'd be what would happen.
It also might just takes the least back. Depending upon resistance, like a human body. Big guy, it may have 5,000 volts going through me, but it could have 7,000 volts going through him.
Show them your muscles there, bud. Are you ready? That answer your question?
Yeah.
But as we said, when you make contact with every type of overhead power, once it gets started, it's violent. Yeah. Because what we're up there working on in lines, as I was telling you guys, with the insulators, the uninsulated wire, we also put the sleeves, one new department, or let's do it pipe hole. That's always good. I kind of like that. I know you used to go around to a lot of fire departments, and years ago, especially a lot of the volunteers, they would tell you, well, I just take, what's your name? Jason. Jason said, well, I just take my pipe pole and move that wire out of the way. Would you ever do that? They didn't pay you enough, did they? You're a smart man. But it started scaring me, so the Allen Center gave me one of their old pipe poles, and we just go around showing that it don't matter. They was just lucky they didn't make contact or that line didn't have any power going through at the time. Because they was lucky. I've heard them say about old rubber gloves. When I first started in this, I'd go around, you'd be surprised how many people would go get the rubber gloves off the truck and bring them to me and say, you got a test date on them. Well, they're setting up the car for it. OSHA says 1 year shelf life on these gloves, they have to be tested. 6 months in the field, I've had people bring them, and they were about ready to crumble. And they're like, can you help me with these guys? Can you fix these for me? I'm like, yeah. Give them a knife like that trigger. Then they're not happy with these. Probably the next thing as we was talking was vehicles, down power lines, all jokes aside. Now this is where it really comes in with you guys, the first responders, is that, when you pull up to a scene and somebody's in a vehicle, what's the first thing you're going to do? Jody, what would you do?
Let's not fire it, so I don't.
What do you do? What do you do? You're a volunteer.
I'm an ER nurse.
ER nurse. Come up here for a minute. We're going to pick on you. Well, I'm going to see if your flip-flops will melt.
I like these shoes.
No, I do. Come on in here for a minute and set that car down, would you?
I'm not sitting that thing.
Oh, yeah, you would.
I would not.
Come right on up here. Anyway, if you, since you're a nurse, and then you seen that you was at the scene, all jokes aside, we're really going to try to put the pressure on you. Let's pretend there's a car tangled up in the power lines right now. What would you do?
I wouldn't want to go.
Would you run up there to the car?
Probably not.
Well, if you did, what would happen? Let's show you what would happen. See the little guy over there? See what's happening? He made contact with that line. What we're going to do, we're going to take some sticks and test the voltage, how much voltage is going to do this. We will move it up here a little closer here in a minute. These guys are professionals. I'm telling you. Look at him.
I don't
What did he say? He had 16 years. 16 years, and this guy's been here 10 months. You ain't got nothing to worry about. I'll give you a little tip. Keep your feet together, or keep one foot up. You'll be all right. Anybody bring her, or did she drive alone? Get her kid. I'm serious. No. You just step right here and see where they got this 0.00. That'll be in thousands. Tell me how much voltage is going through that car.
Okay.
And don't touch that stick.
I'm not touching anything.
You're like rings right now. Boy, we had a firecracker. What's going through that?
14.4.
So how much voltage would you say that is going through that car?
14,400.
400 volts. 120 volts in, 14,400 volts out. So what would you do in that situation? Keep calm? Yes.
Yeah. Keep calm and talk to the person.
Stay about this far away, right?
I'm not going to hear it.
No. Now, if they had to get out of that car, if it's on fire, what do you think would be the best way to try to tell someone?
Out the window.
Out the window. Probably get on the trunk would be a real good one. And jump clear of the vehicle, right? You do not want to step out of that vehicle and touch the ground at the same time. Because that Sean was saying, that electricity is going to go through you. That 14,400 volts.
They jump off the lid.
If they jump, though, if they jump correct, that would be the best. Jump into clear, keep your feet together. They used to tell us the bunny ball, but they found out what was happening, especially in different terrain. People were losing their balance. They're supposed to do that. So you kind of keep your feet together and you're going to walk away as fast as you can for the sway. One of the things we left out though is watch if there's any down power lines or you have guardrails and that line be laying on it, you would not want to walk into it. Right? Yes. Clear? Pretty good? Thank you. Probably the next thing is ladders. One of the things that I put so many of these on and I felt bad for years. I never realized in you guys' business, I always thought you used fiberglass, because that's what we use. You see the guys with the fiberglass sticks and everything, we test them at 100,000 volts per foot. I just assumed you guys had fiberglass ladders. I was down at Guernsey, Muskingum, down there at the county, putting on a presentation for them guys, and one of the guys come up to me, one of the older boys, and he said, "Hey," he said, "I want to tell you something." I said, "Yeah." He said, "We don't have fiberglass ladders. All of our ladders are aluminum." I said, "Really?" He said, "Oh yeah, we'll have them 30 feet long." I said, "Oh my God." You know, you get out in the rural areas and you take a 30-foot ladder and stick it straight up like this. I guarantee you touch a power line. So I got to thinking about that and I was like, can we borrow you one more time, good?
Yes.
Go over and touch that ladder with the end swung around that
I
way.
am not touching that ladder. Crazy.
1 foot.
You are
I'll give you the gloves. No, but all jokes aside, the ladder. So if you was to take one off the truck, you know, and I started thinking about that, especially volunteer people and stuff, how dangerous it would be, because if you was to pull that ladder off, touch that power line, that electricity's going to come through that ladder. And where's it going to go? Through the person that's holding that ladder, right? Least path of resistance, it's going to come down through you, through your feet. Because we had a gentleman that was doing roofing, and he was doing an estimate for one of our members. And he pulled the ladder off and was going over checking the house. He come back and was getting ready to put it back on the lawn, or on his truck. And he must have stood it straight up, everything I could figure. Made contact with our lawn. They called me, and when I got there, I thought, oh my gosh, this ain't gonna be good. The guy's standing. And he had a pair of tennis shoes, and you can see where he was. He took me over and he said, "Well, we're standing right here." Because I said, "Buddy, are you all right?" He said, "Yeah." You can see the imprints of his tennis shoes. I said, "You need to go to the hospital." Oh, he said, "I ain't going to no hospital. It didn't hurt me." Put his ladder back on his truck. I was like, oh my God. Unbelievable. We want to do trees next, guys. Let's burn that tree. How about when we used to climb trees when we was young, right? Everybody loved that. We never looked up about the power lines, did we? You're all quiet over there. What's your name? Yeah. Kevin, did you ever climb trees?
Yeah.
Did you? Yeah. Did you ever look up and see if there was any power lines in them trees?
Yeah, it's pretty close.
Was it? Climb up there anyway? How you doing, Kevin? You're honest, aren't you? You going to show us that other trick you can do? Peel on bananas with your feet? But no, all jokes aside on that, trees, electricity don't care. And as you see, we talk a lot of times out there when we get winds and you get trees laying on the power lines and people want to remove them. Here's what you're going to see. And the closer, it's about like that ripple effect we always talk about. The closer you get to that top of that branch making contact, the more electricity is coming through. You'll see it clear down here on this neutral. See it fire every once in a while? It's conducting clear through that branch. So I don't know how many thousands of volts is going through. You want to try? You don't want to try? You'll try it? Come on. Who wants to touch it? So far we know that it does get very dangerous out there. Fuses, while these guys are getting set up for a minute, talk a lot about fuses and OCRs, oil circuit reclosures, very dangerous. There was an accident that happened over in Pickle County. I'll never forget this. Probably it was 2002. I just built our first demo in OREC, but we're through the Buckeye Rural Electric Association down by Anheuser-Busch off Bush Boulevard. They had an accident over in Pickle County, and the state patrolman pulled up to a scene. The gentleman had been drinking. Pole fell over, but the wire never touched the ground. It sat similar about like this. State patrolman got up there, said, "Hey, Captain, come with me, buddy. Put your bottom down, bud. Let's go. Come on." What do you think poor Kevin did? Walked right into that power line. What they told him at the academy, all these state patrolmen, they said they had this special rope. And he ran back to his cruiser, got the rope, he started throwing, he finally hooked Kevin, drug him out underneath that line. They called me up because they know we started doing a safety demo. They said, hey, Cricket said, we want to give this guy some type of award if he's a hero with this magic rope. I said, guys, there's no such thing as magic rope. This is Marysville's rescue rope we got from them here just a while back. I said, it was lucky he wasn't a victim. But as you see, he just didn't hit the water. So, needless to say, we did this for the state of patrol. They got one of their magic ropes out of the front. Because a lady came up to me from Union County, and she told me, she said, they did this in the county. She said, try this. And we burned their rope just like that. Yeah. So, one of the things that our statewide give us, and Sean's getting ready to throw up here, is a dielectric rope, they call it. And it's supposed to be from the factory. This is dielectric. There's no such thing. What I was telling you guys about these are them polymer insulators. What's nice about them, you can throw that on the ground, it won't break. Throw this porcelain one, it'll get back, right? But lightning won't melt them things. But we'll just show you what happens with dielectric rope. Are you guys ready? I mean, look at that. Looks like a Christmas tree, right? So there's no such thing. I don't care who you are. You take a rope and you throw it over a power line, it's going to be bad news. We got one of you guys' fire hose, and we just wanted to try to burn. Where's the chief? Chief's gone. He always said we try to burn everything yesterday. That's why we had to run him so shook up. We took one of these hoses and thrown it over the line. But, you know, I don't know if this would ever happen. You guys probably wouldn't ever run up near the line unless you was on one of your trucks or something and it made contact. You go over chain link fences. Thank you, Jay. That could be a very good possibility. If that line was to fall, that you have a hold of that hose, it could be bad news. You know, if the pole was burnt, you know, they showed in there how them old CCAs, you got to look and stuff starts falling. That would be a good time. Something to think about. Don't get me wrong. If you had a gate, just open that gate and throw through. Might be able to something different because it don't matter. I know RC, he was good enough to give us a piece of it. And we'd never burned a piece of that before, so we thought, well, shoot, why not try? You guys good? Well, no. See, it's actually feeding through. We're trying to get some of that other to burn. That's where it's connecting. There's the neutral, but it's firing down from the top up there. There it goes. See the other piece? Yep. It will burn. That's actually conducting clear through. If we took that voltmeter right now, and I better put it up. You didn't want that back to RC. Oh yeah, here we go. We broke the meter yesterday. Pull it the other way, guys. We shattered our meter yesterday. That connector, when it went back over, I got a meter on that house. Boom. Was not good. So we know the bird setting on the power line don't get shot. Get a chance, Google, I think it's helicopter lineman. And you guys ever seen, I see a few of you, I always use my presentation, I wish I'd run it with this one. They actually go out and they live line, they'll come up to the power lines, 765,000 volts. They bond on, men in, they don't discriminate, and they step out on that line. And they'll go out and they'll put spacers, but most of the time that's a 4 bundle, and they'll keep it so they don't slap together. They'll put these new spacers on because they'll fall off. Let's do that backboard next, guys. We got this yesterday. That's when the chief really shook his head at us. We were just showing you guys that electricity, it does not matter. It will conduct. If it finds a path, it's going to follow. It's going to take it. Yeah. We hope you guys didn't want this one. Yeah, we're good. You guys in the clear? I just reversed that strap and you can see, listen to that tester go on. We had that backboard so hot yesterday, you couldn't hardly lay your hand on it.
Now what happens when you come into contact with neutral, you say, right?
Not the neutral. Now with the phase, if you touch the phase of neutral, yes. Well, I forgot to tell you guys, I told a couple other stories, was that accident up in Marion. Some of you guys remember that one, that was very sad. Lost 2 of us in that one. Gentlemen, it wasn't very far out of the sub, and near the substation is going to be your worst, the highest fault current is going to be. Gentleman sheared off a pole, paramedics got there before the power company could get there. I always talked to Bill Bennett, he worked for the co-op up there at Marionville Electric, and they was just rounding the corner when these guys made contact. They had that gentleman on the gurney, and he was intoxicated, and it was metal. I call it a gurney, I probably hacked that one all up. Was it, you know, you want to share? I'm sorry?
I've heard this story.
Yeah. And the sad part was the guy started getting a little bit violent, started jerking around, and they don't know what happened, if one of them was trying to get their footing or what, but one of them raised up, and when they raised up, they made contact with the overhead power line. That gurney was touching the ground, probably real close to that neutral, and it energized everything, and two of them lost their life. And the gentleman that was on the gurney, I hate saying that, he didn't hardly get burned. He had some burn marks on him, some flashes, but he was more or less like the bird on the line, because he was sitting on that neutral. Now, if the rest of them could have been up on it, they'd probably all been all right. Next thing I want to talk about is generators, backfeed. You heard me talk about this. Here's what's something so dangerous, and this is straight, just the way it is. You see, we plugged in, show them where we plugged that 30 amp fuse, or plug in. Closed. I was working an ice storm in 04 up in Harding, Logan County, got hit real bad, and everybody was buying generators. There was an electrician going around saying, hey, Sean, if you buy a 30 amp plug, you got a dryer vent, right? Kevin? Just take this plug, go home, plug it in your receptacle, go out there and plug it in your generator. Shut your breaker off, and life will be good. But you forgot to shut your breaker off. And you don't know if that breaker is even going to open. We'll show you here. There's the breakers I was showing you guys here. I'll talk about it here in a minute. On these OCRs, all a breaker in your house is a set of contacts. And it's got a spring just like what this is with this OCR. It sets up underneath here. And I'll talk briefly here in a minute. But that's all that is in your house. When you push that breaker, you flip that breaker. Most of us don't flip anymore. The old push-matics can't hardly afford them. That's all it does. So when we're out there and we flip that breaker, we're just hoping that thing goes open. But if it don't, Kevin's good. He's going, well, if we ever get the generator started. So it happens all the time, guys. Questions? I'll talk just briefly about the old circuit reclosure. You hear me? When this was built, believe it or not, our technology, we're real high tech anymore. These was built back in 1938, 1937 by a gentleman named He built this and it has never changed. You know, we got a lot of difference now where we can close in automatic. This is what's scary. People at home can take their iPads, we can do it. And when we have a breaker in our substation, especially, and it opens up, we can fit in there, punch in a couple buttons, you know, you gotta go through the code. We hit it, boom. Everything now will close back in. And when it goes back in, if there's wires down somewhere nobody knew about, or something broke, the pole finally fell over, now we got problems. So what I always tell everybody, this thing counts. And what it is, you know how I was telling you guys the lights will blink, come back on, they'll go out, come back on. That's all it's doing. Every time this thing's going like that, it opens. And it's hoping that fuse or something's going to clear and go back up. About 7 seconds later, when it's doing that, it's pumping oil on this other side. There's a little orifice in this. Oil goes in there and fills the bowl up. Goes out again. All right, guys, I'm counting 12. Right, Kevin? I don't think I got 2. Now 3. It's saying, now you better open or stuff's going to happen. On the 4th one now, but it's staying. And we have to manually come back with our sticks and do it. But here's what's so scary. Inside that oil, inside that tank, says this. Well, that handle might be down, but you never know these contacts might not open. And that's what's so scary.
How long does it take that cycle?
Most of the time, the cycle as far as blinking, 7 cycles, less than 7 seconds. These things will operate. That's why it's boom, boom. Most of the time, we call them curves. These will have 2A curves. They're real fast. Boom, boom. They're about 4 cycles. Then we go into our B's and our C's. The C is your slowest. It'll retard the longest. And it might be 8 cycles at times because it's got to pump that oil through a little bit smaller hole. That's all it is. And that oil just takes a little bit longer to get in here. So, and we call these old hydraulic OCR. We got a picture on most of them. When we're lying around there looking online, we call what we call put on one shot. We pull this handle down, and we got one ours over there. Is show them that, Sean. It's just when they do that, that takes everything out of the equation. If we have a pump on that line now, it opens one time, it will not close back in. So it's kind of a safety feature for our linemen, but you're still going to see that explosion for a second. Questions? Oh, kite string. Oh, yes. Got a lot of kite string. How many of you like to fly kites? How many of you got told to go fly kites, right? Kite string. I forgot all about this. You see these guys closing in these switches, and all we're going to show you is lights are on. Everybody's happy. Cutout doors. You'll see Sean open this cutout door up. Lights go out. He's going to take that door out. These holders, that's all this is. Them fuses I was showing you guys, that's all that's happening here. Now we're going to take some kite string and basically take it around. There was a little girl out in Indiana, probably been 8 or 10 years now. They used to make this metallic. I hope they took it off the market. If you guys ever, I got great kids, so I'd love to see them fly kites. If you ever see metallic, don't buy it. Same way with that spider wire. We put some of them up. I was going to bring some. I couldn't find the wire today. But we got over 1,000 volts. We can light these lights with spider wire. So if you stand on a bridge and you throw your fish pole out a couple times, there's a power line, you kind of forget and throw it up over it. Or your husband, you say, here, I think let's get cast over that line. So anyway, here we go. This is what's scary. One piece of kite string. Here at tester. Unbelievable. So it can happen, will happen.
Is that conducting the full current to there?
Yep, it's lighting the light. It's putting 14,400 volts right through it. See, it's feeding that transformer. Hey, we got a good light show. RC, what do you think, bud? Put a little music down of it. Get that squirrel dancing, the bird he's sitting there going, hey, you guys are all nuts. I don't think it'll quit, though. That was disco. So yeah, it was pulling the full amount, see, because it's going through that transformer. And if we measure that jumper on there while that thing was going like that, you'd have 14,000, probably, what would we say, 14,400. So another thing I want to do while these guys get set up, underground. We talked a lot about this side over here is our underground. This is our primary cable. This is what's so crazy. You guys look. I always tell everybody this 811's free charge for digging. We can put this cable underground, and it only has to be by code 24 inches deep. And we can run 14,000. If it's 50,000 volts, it only has to be 40 inches. It is unbelievable. But this is our primary pretty standard. We'll run 14,400 volts for this center wire, and that basically would be this one that we. But what this is our transmission. You got sooner or later, you come from overhead power lines into underground. This is a pod head. They should call you after school, do Jay. But anyway, this is that transition. And all it is, they do a compression crimp, nothing fancy. This just keeps the water, we call this a skirt. This just keeps the water from going down into the insulation on this and freezing the thaw. So what this is, pop, bang, goes into this, goes down over to a green box. You guys ever got called out on a vehicle accident? Hit? Did you ever move that green box? How come? What's your name? Yes, good job. Because inside that, you see it in that video, here's what you got. This transition. We don't make stuff real high tech. It looks high tech. But all this is, inside that transformer, this bushing screws in that transformer. Remember what the guy said? I always like that. An underground transformer is what? What did he say? Not a telephone pole. Who do we work for? Jay, get to the back. I want to range that. A telephone. Does this say telephone? What kind of poles are there? Electric poles. A telephone. Electric poles. But it's an overhead electric line in a box, right? I didn't pick one, but everybody said telephone. I had a good friend of mine, his dad wanted some telephone poles. And he's standing there, and his boy said, "Hey, Cricket, you got any telephone poles down in my deck now?" I said, "That's not a one." They looked, they said, "What?" I said, "We're an electric company. We don't have a telephone pole. We got electric poles." So anyway, back to this. This is that transition goes in there. Well, you can see that's not much. If this pops off, when that vehicle hit that pole, this makes contact with the side of that transformer, guess what? It's going to be the same mark what you see. Because this weight we have here is what we call a snuffer. And all it is in subdivisions, when we're in there working, we can pull this with our shotgun, and we don't have to shut everybody's power off. We can do sections. We can backfeed. So that's all this is. But that metal would be the same 14,400 volts going through it. That's why it's so important not to do. Inside them things, what's so crazy is a fuse. You hear everything we do, we try to fuse. This is the fuse holder. This is actually the fuse. I'll give you guys a couple. Hold that up to the light, you'll see a little piece of wire come through there. That's the fuse. If you want, they wake up. So inside that, this is where the lead is. You see, just like our cutouts as we're showing, bing bang, like that. You have your line in, load out. This thing, that fuse holder sets right here. That's all. So when you're there or you're digging, we had a gentleman take a drill bit for a cake cutting, backside of the hole. He goes drilling along by 8:30 in the morning. Boom. Luckily, he walked away. I couldn't believe it. When I got the phone calls down here on County Road 9, they said, "Chris, we got to get down there and get the telephone guy or cable guy." He got on telephone now. Just got electric. So I get down there, there's this one guy by himself. Bed in the truck looking at his drill bit. I said, "Are you all right?" Doors open, had a big bang. He said, "Yeah." I said, "Oh my God." He said, he couldn't believe he did it. He was supposed to have a guy with him. Guy didn't show up that morning. Luckier than him. I handed him $5 told him to play lucky. I'd never seen a guy any more lucky. He said he had a good friend in Georgia, down around Atlanta. Did this and got severely burned. He wasn't as lucky. So back to the fuses. One of the other things I'll talk about real quick, and I'm going to pick on Jay, service loops. Weather heads, where they make the connections, sometimes they look like that. Would you reach up there and set a bolt cutter and cut that? Okay. There's a lot of wires. Could you cut one at a time? You could if you had to, but I wouldn't recommend it. Because it ain't going to be perfect. You know what I mean? There'll be telephones ringing everywhere, I'll tell you. Satellite's going to leak down. Anyway, back to where we're at. I'll get my phones here. I'll get thrown out of here yet. What about the squirrel? Cody? We know the bird.
He has rubber feet too.
He's got rubber feet. Just keep an eye on him. We've been talking about that. See what happens. Now what just happened here? What's your name? Josie just jumped in. What happened? The fuse. You gonna be all right? voltmeter real quick. Let's show them what happened. You see the cutout doors, you always heard the myth, well, that door's down, the line's dead. That's not true. You ever had anybody tell you that?
What if you're cut out?
I'm sorry? I wait for them to put this ground on. Because what we're going to show you here is, John, you got the test? The question was asked, though, about working on two sides. The only way I would do that is if the lineman came out there, they tested, they verified it, and they put this on. And I can show you here in a minute. We'll show you guys how we test, and you'll see how weird this stuff is. I'm sorry, I scared you. I was up in Mount Gilead. Yeah, you can pass that around. It's a welding cable, nothing fancy. The only thing fancy on this is these compression clips. We grip these with 10,000 pounds, and then they thread in this, and we have another nut that tightens down on it. And we have to test these once a year. You'll see the test right here. You can test it. And all it is, they do a continuity. It just tells us how much. So when this is open, what was your question again?
Can you work it between the two cutouts?
If you didn't know, if it wasn't grounded, watch what happens. On this side,
Right.
energized. Energized. Now watch below. Still a little bit of voltage bleeding through it, but not much. See that? So I would never trust that, even if they told you that it's open, I can see it. No. Unless they grounded it, I would not touch that wire. Exactly. Space leaf is no CR. Very good, Sean. Because that oil circuit reclosure, again, you're back to this. You're risking your life. You can't see it. You're hoping them contacts open. Don't know. They could have stayed shut. Doors open. Like we got, and it's still energized. Well, shut the door and let's show them. We got two cutouts. Let's do the pretend. How's that sound? And there will be another bag. No. All right, we got two. Let's say this line's still going, right? And what was your name again? Greg. All right, Greg. We got two cutouts. It's dead. Go on up there and touch it, Greg. Here, come on. Yeah. Stand on one foot. That's what that one guy said. Yeah. You ain't that short. You don't come and see. So see what we're going to have here? It's hot. Now watch. Hot. Now go on the other side and watch what he does. Now how's that? Why is it? It's because it's still closed in, right? Watch what Sean does. Now watch. See that? Them contacts right there. You heard that click? That closed it back in. Clear as mud. But I would like to show you guys how we ground. If you guys don't care, let's do that real quick. Just throw that ground on there. We always tell them to test. They'll get a visible opening. What I tell our guys, if they don't have an air gap, they work it as it's hot. Don't ever think. The sad part is where these cutouts are starting to break down, the porcelain is getting bad on them, and they'll bleed through. And a lot of people's getting hurt. They had a gentleman in Florida here about 2 months now. I got to kind of get these incident reports all over the United States, and the voltage had leaked through the transformer and burnt the guy real bad. And he was alive. Took his gloves off. Everybody's like, well, how the heck did that happen? Well, when they got the look at these cutouts, because that's why I tell our guys, if you don't get a bit of air gap, you don't want me to come around. So what they do is they test first. They're getting a test of no presence of voltage, absence of voltage, and then see they go to the neutral first. And a lot of times you can put that one off by hand. Normally we tell them just use the stick. That way they stay down 8 feet. And then what they're going to do. They haven't changed that concept forever. You can stand on a pole and work it there, or you can work it in the bucket. There, now, say, you know, now don't get me wrong, we'd have another one on this side for you, but then you would go in and we'd say everything's clear, you guys do what you want now. But until that, I'd never trust him. Not if I was getting around them lines. Now, if you was staying back, you know, they always say 50 feet. You know, questions, gotta have one or two, right? You get paid per question.
So that thing there, like, takes, what is it, how does that work? It just takes the power from the two and draws it in?
Oh, it makes it one. It takes it back to
Oh, it
her.
makes it one circuit.
Yeah, seeing this bottom wire is neutral. That's, we got ground rods driven in certain places where we have equipment. Everything's tied back to her.
Okay.
So what we did was tie that one at the same tension. So now if I was to close in, it would trip that breaker. With the next one upstream.
What about flood waters down power lines in the water?
Bad news.
How close? Because it's gonna be difficult lines in the water for anybody to see.
I know. Again, if you had to go in, what are you going in for? That's what I would say. Are you doing a rescue?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
any circumstance where you need water around flood waters.
I would be very nervous, but again, as long as you stay in that boat, you would be in that potential. But if you was to get out and lose your balance, your touch, or that paddle gets out in the water, it could bleed through, you could get different holes.
Well, I mean, with our hot sticks, how close are we?
I wouldn't get the water. I would not. I know when I was down at Katrina, we went down there and worked. When Katrina hit, I was down there 2 weeks. And I was talking to a bunch of the linemen. We was getting ready to go back in a swamp and work. And I told him, I said, well, I ain't going in until we test the ground. One old boy, a big old rugged guy, he said, oh, we don't need all that stuff. Boy, come on with me. I said, nah. I said, you don't need to do that. He said, oh, shoot. He said, we'll just wade back here. I said, wade? Nah, for one thing, I'm too short, but that water's too deep. Oh, yeah. He said, oh, we do it all the time. They'll go back in there, wade in, and stand underneath the pole and shove it in. Well, we got to drinking some beer afterwards, and it just kept bugging me. And I finally told him, I said, you're crazy. I said, have you ever had anything come down that pole? You ever heard of fault current? Well, he said, they told me that one time, but I don't believe it. I said, well, I can show you. If you was around where I have my little demo, I said, I guarantee I can show you what would happen. You just been lucky. You got to think. But that's dangerous. I always say, what are you going in for? If it's not life, wanting something to save somebody's life, I would not risk mine. Trust me. And if I'm down power lines until the power company got there and threw a set of grounds on or told me it was grounded, I wouldn't go in unless you absolutely felt like it. That little thing right there, you might be a little better because it's plastic or, you know, it's rubber. But again, if you get outside of it, you lose your balance, you're touching inside that water, it could be bad. You're going to get a difference. It'd be no difference than us taking a step. That molded you. Basically, you can take probably or, you know, no jokes aside. I bet when you take a step, you're probably doing what, 3 feet? Yep. What was your question?
How far away will it start from water?
It just depends. What it looks for is a resistance. So it's setting there. What I always tell everybody is like, go back to the water, throw the pebble in the water, boom. And you see them ripples going on? It could be starting out super fast, and then it's going to dissipate as that goes out. But nobody knows unless we have one of our magic sticks. We can keep testing and saying, okay, here's 1,000.
Will the testers work on water?
No,
So it's only gonna work on the line?
Yes.
So you won't be able to tell if the water's charged or not?
no. Unless you had if you had a way to get on cold ground or another reference, you're not going to be able to see it. That's what's
You
scary.
got like a bathtub and stuff, you know, you say stick a toaster oven or a hair dryer in there. You know, back in the 60s, 70s, early 80s, they didn't have the GFIs built into the plug. And you could do that. That bathtub could sit there and energize the whole time. So until the upline device or device opens up, it's going to sit there, no matter the body of the water. It'll energize the bathtub, it'll energize the swimming pool, small pond. You just don't know how much voltage there. I mean, it's going to leak out in the ground, but that first contact, that first step potential could be very good.
Don't matter. It wouldn't matter. As long as it's enough to where it gets a little bit of an insulation. Most of the time your tubs are porcelain anyway, you know, or I'll go back to the tub. It don't matter.
So let's say this fuse did blow. Okay, it's raining out, you're talking about flood water. I've seen doors with the fuse blown, still closed in, and still energized the transfer. Because it's just being dirty, old cutout doors, even that door could be blown. If you blown that doors up, it could leak through that cutout door. That's laying on anything, water, guardrail, fence, in somebody's basement. I mean, it could back, just like we're doing here, it could backfeed. Let's say you got the main breaker doesn't trip. You get a couple of smaller breakers, you got a water defect. Same thing, that basement could become energized. If it's not finding a path, a high enough resistance path to ground, it will not trip that breaker. It will sit there energized.
I'll tell you what we got right now, and Sean and Dustin both will agree. This OCR, we're working on it to get it to work 100%. We're trying to get this thing where we can blink and blang and do a lot. We're taking a 100 amp breaker right now, going phase to ground. It'd be just like taking it, touching it together.
This sort of ground.
Yep. And it won't trip. It'll sit there and just. We can register 120 volts across them two bushings. These bushings right here. I can take a voltmeter and lay it right here, and it'll show 120 volts, but it won't trip. And I know you look, you'd say it's impossible. You tell people and they go, no way. It's back to that resistance. Not high enough, just like a line laying on the ground. And I got some photos. You'll see at times what's so dangerous is it won't trip. That power line will lay there, and it'll get enough insulation or not enough resistance that it won't trip out. And that breaker upstream is saying, somebody kick something more on, I'm gonna give a little bit more juice.
Ice storms.
Yeah.
Snowstorms. I've seen ice on wire upwards of 3 inches around and still energized.
Yeah.
Laying on the ground. Snow, as long as it's clean, it's not very clean snow, it'll sit there and just stay energized. You don't even know.
Me and a guy, back in 1989, we had a real bad ice storm. And we're driving up the road. We had up around the chicken farms up toward Raymond and that. We got a lot of chicken farms up there, many chickens. So we try to keep them on the best we could. We had finally turned that circuit on the day before, and we're driving back, and they dispatched to us and said, "Hey, come on back in, get something to eat." But had probably 12, 14 hours in. They said, "Come on back, get something to eat." We said, "All right, we're driving down the road," and both of us at the same time. It was an OCR, just like yes, a single phase coming off the three phase right there at the chicken farms. The wire's laying on the ground. The handle's closed in. We both looked over at each other and said, "Oh my God, that line's hot." And it was. And it had been there for 2 days. And just stayed energized. We dispatched back to him and said, "Hey, we're going to be a minute." We opened this up, opened the handle. And then we went up with our hot sticks and lifted the jumpers. Unbelievable. Somebody that got out of their vehicle, or one of the linemen back in, would have got out and walked up to that. It had been bad.